Welcome, I'm Claire Shaeffer. Today we're going to look at some of the magnificent designs in Guo Pei's exhibition, Couture Fantasy. I've sorted through hundreds of photos and selected some for this video. I'll do another video later to include the rest. Guo Pei creates a fantasy that fuses the influences of China's imperial past, decorative arts, European architecture, and the botanical world. The designs were described as couture, and they could be worn, but they are more art than couture. This does not diminish the beauty or the skill required to embroider them. The Elysium collection is from 2018. Influenced by Guo Pei's love of flowers, this 2018 design required 10,000 hours to make. This photo by Gary Sexton was from the museum's press kit. The skirt is made of bamboo in a basketry weave. It opens at center front and center back so it can be put on. The dress was embellished with Swarovski rhinestones, resin beads and sequins, metallic thread, guipure lace, copper, steel wire, gold foil, and silk. Here is one last look at a detail. This collection is about the dream of a little girl whose Barbie dolls come to life. You can see the heavily beaded pants below this stunning dress. Fabricated in a jacquard silk, this dress is embroidered with metallic threads, resin cabochons, and Swarovski crystals. The dress back is as interesting as the front. In this detail, you can see the resin cabochons in the embroidery. This silk dress is trimmed with silver. The bolero is embroidered with silk and metallic threads and metal coil, and embellished with resin cabochons, Swarovski, crystals, and rhinestones. The hem is finished with a machine-stitched bias binding. This silk gown, vest, and collar were embroidered with silk and silver threads and embellished with resin cabochons and Swarovski crystals. The vest appears to be made of a transparent fabric, perhaps organza. The edges are finished with silver bindings. In this detail, you can see the embroidery at the hem and the satin-covered balls above and below the embroidery. The stunning collar was made of resin beads. The cuffs were embroidered with silk and silver threads and embellished with resin cabochons and Swarovski crystals. This silk ensemble was inspired by the Spanish matadors. The gallery label did not describe the sleeves. They appear to be silk. This ensemble was embroidered with silk and silver threads and embellished with resin cabochons and Swarovski crystals and rhinestones. In this detail, you can see the embroidery on the pants. Each of the designs in this gallery are quite different, but the embellishments for each are more or less the same. The only information about the pleated fabrics was that they were silk. The jacket was embroidered with silk and silver threads and metal and embellished with silk-covered beads and Swarovski crystals and rhinestones. Silk-covered balls were used on the fringe. The three-tiered skirt features heavily embroidered skirts over pleated underskirts. The edges of the embroidered skirts were finished with decorative bindings. The edges of the silk underskirts were folded. This dress features a pleated bodice and an embroidered skirt. The skirt was embroidered with silk and silver threads and embellished with resin cabochons and Swarovski crystals and a rhinestone. The edge is finished with a binding and a silk-covered ball fringe. This strapless dress featured an embroidered band at the top and 5 rows of pleated silk. The strapless top was finished with an embroidered band. This silk dress appears to be taffeta. The skirt was embellished with silk and silver threads. A silver bias binding was machine stitched at the hem. The collar was embroidered with silk and silver threads. Silk-covered balls outlined the center front and waist. In the museum catalog, the designs for Alternate Universe were described in the Reincarnation chapter as 2 worlds in one space. This was my least favorite gallery, but there were a few interesting designs. This dress is fabricated in pineapple fiber, silk, and synthetic fibers. This stunning bodice is probably the pineapple fiber, but the label was not specific. I would have liked it better without the pom-pom trim on the neckline. The skirt was embroidered with gold and silver threads and raffia. It was embellished with Ramie, rosettes, and Swarovski crystals and rhinestones. This design was fashioned as a puppet theater. The monkey puppeteer at the waist controls the puppets. The skirt hem appears to be finished with blue thread on a serger. Each doll was created by a different member of Guo Pei's staff. This ensemble, cloak and robe, was fabricated in pineapple fiber and polyester. It was embroidered with gold and silver threads, embellished with feathers, silk-covered beads, metallic thread tassels, and Swarovski rhinestones, crystals, and beads. This gallery was inspired by the women who lived in Beijing's Forbidden City during the Qing dynasty. The runway designs were inspired by sartorial practices of China's final dynasty. This collection celebrated not only the women who might have worn elaborate robes, but also the skilled needleworkers who created them. This dress was fabricated in a silk and gold blend. The bodice design for the front with the stand collar and cap sleeves is stunning. The dress was embroidered with silk, silver, and gold threads and embellished with sequins and Swarovski crystals and rhinestones. The open back is interesting and folds back like lapels at the waist. The dress is open below the turn-back section. The unfastened skirt has buttons and loops from the waist to the hem. The hem embroidery continues to the back opening. This design is made of silk and printed plastic and embellished with Swarovski crystals and rhinestones. The dress is very simple. This is one of the most unique fabrics I've ever seen. I would have liked more information about the fabric. This ensemble was fabricated in silk and metal blend. It was embroidered with silk and gold threads and embellished with Swarovski crystals and rhinestones. The top was described as a corset. I would have called it a camisole. It fastens on the side with buttons and loops. Several of the designs in this gallery were made with fabrics woven with metal and silk, and many featured Chinese motifs. This stunning dress features a simple dress and very ornate embroidered sleeves. Mother of pearl was applied to the silk dress. The back of this dress is as stunning as the front. I wish it had been displayed so you could see the back better. The soft shades of blue on this design are an interesting change from the vibrant colors on other dresses. The fabric for the qipao was made by combining historic techniques for lacquerware and gilt-thread weaving. Thin sheets of mother of pearl were shaved from the insides of the abalone shells and applied to mulberry paper. The shell lacquered paper was then cut into thin strips which were woven into fabric. This ensemble was embroidered with silk, silver, and gold. This silk jacket was embellished with Swarovski crystals, rhinestones, and beads. Notice the bead fringes on the skirt. The skirt has horizontal stripes of silk fringe. The embroidery on this jacket is truly stunning. The horizontal strips were described as silk fringe. This detail shows the bead fringes and silk fringe strips. This was the last design in the East Palace. The bodice was embroidered with silk cords, embellished with silk-covered buttons and Swarovski crystals. The skirt appears to be woven with silk and metal. You can see this beautiful fabric much better in this detail. This photo was from the exhibition's press kit. The photographer was Gary Sexton. This iconic design is an homage to the blue and white ceramics. The sculptured silhouette is reminiscent of a folding fan. This unusual neckline is particularly attractive. The dress was hand-painted silk, embroidered with silk threads, and embellished with Swarovski crystals. I tried unsuccessfully to photograph the thousands of satin stitches on this dress. The pattern is lovely, even though the satin stitches do not show in my photograph. These dresses were my favorites. They were hand-painted silk and embroidered with silk threads and embellished with Swarovski crystals. This elegant dress has a pleated sash at the waist, perhaps influenced by the Chinese obi. The hem was finished with a machine-stitched binding. I think this was one of the most interesting dresses in the exhibition. This dress has a flesh-colored tulle yoke at the top to give the illusion that the dress is off the shoulder. In this detail, you can see the slip, which should have been a little shorter than the dress. This dress and shorts are silk with gold leaf and acrylic embellished with Swarovski rhinestones. The necklace is made of copper, base metal, and Swarovski rhinestones. This design was fabricated in a jacquard silk and embellished with beads, gems, Swarovski crystals, and copper appliques. The bodice of the dress was lavishly embellished. The dress required 3,000 hours to complete. This unusual skirt was made of fabric-covered cones. Legend of the Dragon was a collection in 2012. This silk dress and coat were embroidered with gold and silver threads, embellished with Swarovski crystals and rhinestones, tourmalines, copper, faux pearls, and resin sequins and beads. It was trimmed with mink. The embroidery included couching, padded and encroaching satin stitches, and honeycomb stitches. The Swarovski crystal necklace holds the double happiness symbol. The dress was embroidered with chain and knot stitches, as well as satin and couching stitches. Tourmalines, enameled copper, resin sequins and beads, and Swarovski crystals were used to embellish the dress. This silk jumpsuit was embroidered with silk and gold threads and embellished with metallic thread, guipure lace, copper ornaments, resin sequins and beads, and Swarovski crystals and rhinestones. As you can see, the wings wrap around the body. The Courtyard was a collection in 2016. Designs were placed in 10 galleries on the main floor of the museum, as well as in the exhibition gallery. This photo is from the museum's press kit. The photographer was Gary Sexton. The dress and jacket were made of silk and polyester. The jacket was embroidered with silk and sheer threads, embellished with ostrich feathers, zircon beads, and Swarovski crystals and rhinestones. This corseted jacket shows the influence of Western culture on the designer. This handsome design features zircon stones. In this side view, you can see the beautiful embroidered sleeve. The embroidery on this skirt is reminiscent of English broderie anglaise. The skirt has at least 2 embroidered layers. The jacket train is edged with 2 rows of ostrich feathers separated by an embroidered band. This detail shows the embroidered band on the edge of the train. This exhibition was a stunning display of incredible embroidery and design. Before we say goodbye, let's take one more look at this stunning gown. It is quite beautiful, isn't it? I'm Claire Shaeffer. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you will join my channel to see more videos.